I'd like to call the City of Groton Special Committee of the whole meeting for Thursday, August 31st, 2017 to order. Clerk Patrick, will you please call the roll?
Present are Councilors Jill Rust, Jamal Beckford. I guess I should have started with the mayor. I'm sorry. Present are Mayor Keith Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Lawrence Garris, Councilors Jill Rust, Jamal Beckford, Stephen Sheffield, Conrad Heed, Rashad Carter, Finance Director Ron Uhas, Clerk Deborah Patrick.
Okay, thank you. The first order of business is executive session. I'd like to get a motion to discuss personnel, police department to include the council, Chief Spellman and Officer Jennings, and to discuss personnel, human resources department to include the council and Linda Avedisian, and to discuss lease of real estate to expand offices to include council, Ron Gaudet, and Sue Blanchett.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. We are now in executive session. Okay, thank you. We will continue with referrals. Number one is the appointment of Jamon Jennings, promotion to corporal. We'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 5 September.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Appointment of Linda Avedisian, Human Resources Director. Need a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 5 September.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. 578, municipal projects, upgrade of the fire alarm panel. 578. The reason this is back to you is originally when we were repurposing the bond, this was initially estimated at $25,000. One of the things that we found is that there are additional monitors that need to be installed in the ventilation system that we did not know, and as a result of that, the new bid is $31,560. Ron, is there anything else that you think that the council should know?
And this would go into waive the bid process because this is a sole source vendor. They are the current vendors of our current fire software, so or system. So it is a sole source. That's why there's only one quote.
Okay. Where's the additional money coming from?
It's still coming out of that repurposed bond fund. We had repurposed $400,000 that was allocated for a bunch of municipal building improvements. So even though when we came up with that $400,000, our initial cost estimate was the 25. We'll reallocate some of that money around to get the additional.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 5 September.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. The next one is, the next one is, where am
Costa.
I? This is the Costa Property Landscape. 578. Oh, where am I? American, excuse me, yeah.
I think there were two of them.
There are, right, there are, and I'm trying to get to that. Okay. Okay, Mary, would you like to discuss this and why this is to the council?
This is being brought to you tonight.
Yes.
I started back in June to get quotes to get the project done. Reached out to 4 landscapers. Starting on the 28th of June, I started meeting with some of them down at the Costa property. Out of the 4, one said he wasn't taking new customers anymore. Another one said that he made an appointment, then canceled and didn't meet me down there. And I did meet with 2 companies to show them the project. This is a project that's been kind of sitting there. We'd really like to get it going. So I met with 2 landscapers. showed them what I wanted to do. We want to grass it, we want to put some creeping juniper down the embankment closest to the PAF. We want to landscape it so we can make it usable space. Some shrubbery that closes off some access areas so people can't just drive a car in and whatnot. Of the two landscape companies that I met, the last one on July 12th, I got one quote. And so trying to expedite this project so we can get it off the ground and get it in place by the, this fall season, because the fall's a good time to plant grass. I'm bringing this to you because it is above the requirement, the 10,000 to have to take it out to bid, but I've been trying to get quotes this spring and summer was difficult, and I would like to move forward with the company that did meet me down there a couple times, has put a proposal together on the timely fashion that he was asked to, and still haven't heard back from the other gentleman who's met me there on the 12th, and it's almost 2 months. The one that we got within the 2-week window that I asked for it. So,
Councilor Heed?
That's okay, until you're
I'm sorry,
finished.
Mary, please continue.
no, I'm good.
Councilor Heed?
I am familiar with the Jenkins Landscaping and Lawn Care Company, the individuals who run it. It's local, and I know that they're very reputable.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Mary? Councilor Russ?
Just in general, I don't know if Mary knows the answer to this, but once this is done, is the property going to be accessible for residents? I know there was talk about still having to put in a fence between or something between Garbo's property and the Costa property.
We want to get it landscaped first, so we know where, we do have a quote for an additional fencing on that building side. The goal right now is to get it landscaped so we know where that fence should go.
Okay.
And then we also have additional monies to get picnic tables and benches to put down there. And so it's a pedestrian type of, there wouldn't be vehicle traffic, but it would be spaces that people could walk down and, park up top and walk down and use the space.
So the intent with this is to make it so that we can have a passive recreation area. We do not intend, correct me if I'm wrong, we do not intend to postpone this until such time that we get that other fence in. People can still recreate down there, and that's the intent of getting this ready.
As soon as this landscaping is done, people
Yes, ma'am.
can start going down there.
Right.
Okay, that's my question.
As soon as the grass grows.
Yeah, exactly. Let the grass grow first. I get that.
Yep.
We waited this long.
Yep.
This has been a long-term project. This is a project that we are trying to move. Part of this ended up being in the summer. Mary and I talked about it. It didn't quite make sense to try to plant grass and get it to grow in the summer. Fall is a better time. We may get limited use out of it here in the fall. I don't know, people may come down in the winter to want to look. If you've noticed, we do have a fence along the water, so that keeps it safe there. But the intent is to get this so that we can start using this as soon as possible.
Our goal was ultimately for our department to actually do the work, but this spring was just with the rain, and we had a hard time keeping up with the grass that we have. So we couldn't plant any new stuff. So this is the alternative way to go, so we get that project up and going and use it.
And that's not an
And just
option,
like-
sorry.
Go ahead.
And that's not an option for you guys to do it in the fall? Okay.
The 3-man crew it's hard enough to keep up with what we have.
Thank
So.
you.
Councilor Butcher?
I would just like to second what Conrad Heat said. That I am familiar with the group, and I think they do a fine job. So
Okay.
Move that this be moved to the September 5th
I second it.
meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Okay, the next thing is 643 SB4, an act concerning municipal electric utility cooperatives. What you have in front of you excuse me, let me get to mine. What you have in front of you is the latest version of the ordinance that we have. There are still a couple of things that we're trying to resolve, which is how much the stipend would be and what talks about that. Initially, we have written this, we've asked the Utilities Director and his staff to look at this. We're going to let the Utilities Commission look at it so that they're comfortable with this. The intent of this is to meet the requirement of SB4, which is now PA 17 Tax 73. This is the requirement that this meets our requirement of having a ratepayer. Also, there's other things that are in here as far as posting of meetings and posting of minutes. And so we had to define the ratepayer, we had to define what the salaries are gonna be and where that's gonna come from and those kind of things, whether we're gonna do it or whether it's gonna be from CMEC. CMEC is currently authorized an amount. We're trying to determine what that amount is and what the specific document is that states that, because I want to quote that in here. Because the way we're set up now is that I am on the board, Director Gaudet is on the board, and the finance manager Collard is on the board. Our money goes to the rate stabilization fund. So Jeff Godley is also a member director, alternate director, I think. He has elected to have his fund go to the rate stabilization fund. The ratepayer, depending on who it is, could take the stipend or could have it deposited to the rate stabilization fund. And so we're trying to verify the current amount. One of the challenges that you may not be aware is that there's for example, a monthly meeting, the minutes and the supporting documentation for the meeting is approximately 3/4 to an inch thick. I mean, there is really a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of backup, and a lot of preparation that goes into that. So we're still trying to work through that. What else? The requirement by SB4 or by the PA 1773 is that this is supposed to be enacted by 1 October. I have talked to my attorney and I have talked to my, actually not my, but the utilities lobbyist, and he has talked to Hartford about what is the penalty if I do not make 1 October. And he said there's nothing written in the thing. He reached out, and basically the thing is there's no initial thing, but you kind of need to get to it. So what we are proposing is we're going to work out a couple things, and then the first reading would be 9/5/17. That would be the initial reading of this, and then the second reading, the final reading, would be 2 October, which is the Monday. 1 October actually is on a Sunday. So although we would not meet the specific date of 1 October, we would meet the intent. And then somewhere between now and then, I need to find a ratepayer representative to recommend to you. But the requirement is to have the ordinance in place, and we are working quickly to try to do that. Councilor Russ asked me regarding could we bring it up on the 18th of September, and I need to find out the answer to that. Deb, how much time is required to be between the initial reading and the final? Do you remember? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I believe it has to be at least 2 weeks.
Okay, so that wouldn't give us, I think would be short a day, but I will talk to Heidi and I will get back to you regarding how long we have to have this out and whether or not we might need whether or not we would need a special meeting in order to meet the 1 October. Based on discussions with other members, we are far and away ahead of everybody else. Now, I'm not gauging our success based on everybody else. We're not in competition with anybody else. I'm basing it on us meeting the requirements. Counselor Beck.
Yes, so Mayor, maybe this isn't the right forum to ask about some of the language in this.
Sure.
But I saw that a lot of it had to do with supermajority vote of the council.
Right.
And I know that there are only 6 of us, so is it that a
It's a
two-thirds?
two-thirds vote.
Right, so, okay.
Does that answer your?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that has any questions on this? I encourage you to take a look at this. If you have any questions, please send us, either me or Heidi, an email. We will get back to you, but I would like to get a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 5 September.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Okay, the next one is 645, group referrals purchasing ordinance. For those of you that are currently on the finance committee, there is an item on the agenda regarding something to the effect of purchasing or preferential treatment or something like that for local vendors. Originally, this came out of a motion from then Councilor Dempsey regarding preferential treatment for local bidders. We looked at Stonington's ordinance, and then we wrestled with for a while, now, 2 or 3 years actually, of whether or not this is going to be a local policy or this is going to be an ordinance. We have decided, finance has decided, because once we started looking at this, we realized there were general applications to the municipality and to the utility. Excuse me. So we are going to make this an internal policy, but we are also going to need to revise the current ordinance to remove parts out of the ordinance that belong into the policy document. Is that correct? Okay, Ron, would you like to add a little more on that?
What it does is it leaves the ordinance more on the higher level and kind of establishing the guidelines, but doesn't get into the details of dollar amounts and all those type of things, like kind of what we've been doing with our fees. So every time that there is a change, we don't have to go back and rewrite the ordinance, go through that process, pay the fees to do that. So it's to try to keep it so we can make changes to it as necessary without having to go through the whole ordinance process all over again. But the ordinance will have that high level structure of how it's laid out.
Councilor Sheffield?
Okay, so we're going to revise the current proposed ordinance, because there hasn't been an official ordinance regarding purchasing, correct? Or was there?
We have a current ordinance that basically establishes the purchasing department
Okay,
and then has additional language that is going to be removed from that ordinance, and that will be covered in the financial policy. That's accurate, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
through your department, through
through finance.
okay.
What is the expectation for this? Is there an expectation to move this? Because we're not ready for the ordinance nor the policy, right?
No, I think this was just to get it back to group, but with the correct, to change it from the purchasing ordinance as opposed to just that.
Right, so we are going to get this back to group, to the finance.
Right.
Okay. Well,
and then that'll be discussed again, and Ron will attend the meeting when you request him,
okay.
so that we can further go through this and clarify the ordinance and the purchasing policy. So no action is required at this meeting. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, moving on to 647, acceptance of the NINSEP grant funds expenditure for upgrade of municipal building security, 647. Ron, if you could walk us through that?
This is the 2018 Nuclear Safety Emergency Program grant. You can see kind of through the backup here, this grant was actually submitted in January of 2017 by then Chief Davrin. And it kind of what it has in there is 3 months of the planning salary, Phase 3 of the municipal building security camera enhancement for the 18,000, 2 movable smart board systems for 13,000, for a total of the 33,145. That grant was approved. So what they do is we submit it, what we want to use the funds for. They approve it and come back. So this is just accepting the grant and then also accepting the expenditure on the other side as far as what that grant was approved for by the state.
Any questions or comments from Councilor Russ?
Just for clarification, we are getting the $33,000 plus in a grant, and then we are approving that money be spent on this.
On what they approve the grant money to be spent for, yeah.
Okay.
So it's more just kind of a formality. We actually have to go to the state to get approval, what we're gonna spend the money on, then they okay it, and then, so as part of the process, we have to accept the grant as the first part, and then the expenditure obviously being over the 10,000 would come back.
So we need this actually moved for the September 5th meeting, right? Okay, so okay, we have a motion from
Second.
Deputy Mayor Garish.
Second?
We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Any discussion of city flood insurance policies? Before we get into this, Ron and I started this discussion before the latest hurricane and floods in Texas. One of the challenges we have is that the current insurance that we have on the Tyler house and on the Zabierski house has a $500,000 deductible. Because of that, we have another insurance on that insurance that is $10,000?
50.
Sorry, $50,000 deductible. So we're paying two insurances. So the one insurance, the $50,000 that we're paying, is to cover the $500,000 deductible to the higher insurance. Does that, everybody understand? I know it's convoluted.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Well, this is legal.
Oh, it was not accusing me.
No, I understand, but it is legal. So,
Is it the most cost-effective way of doing that?
thank you. So here we go. I asked Ron to look at some numbers because the question is, if we keep paying for all of our insurances, what does that cost versus not having the insurance, taking the risk, and then if we have a detrimental problem, flooding, because this is flooding only, then we would have to pay the $500,000 out of pocket, right? So you're talking about the risk associated, because you asked for options.
Right.
This is not the, this
That
is the.
wasn't my thought.
But this is what drove us here.
Right.
Okay.
Right, because during Sandy is the storm you and I were talking about? During Hurricane Storm Sandy, if you go look at the Tyler house and you go look at the Zabierski house has a basement. The Tyler house is built on ledge, doesn't have a basement, so anything that washes through, washes right under and washes right through.
Isn't that opposite?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mary, if you
I
could,
was like, there's a basement.
The Tyler house has a basement, but it's
Sorry.
designed where under the half moon louvers that are under
Yep.
in the base of the foundation, so the water flows through. So when it comes, like when Superstorm Sandy surged up, the water kind of went in and out of the Tyler house basement.
Okay.
Not so much with the Zabierski house. We had 8 feet of water in the basement of the Zabierski house.
and we lost the tank, oil tank, and the heater,
Yeah.
furnace. All right.
Furnace, and then we had to have an environmentally removed because the oil
Right.
that was in the tank, as the tank floated,
It leaked out.
mixed in with the water, mixed in. So we had to have an environmental company come in.
So this is what I've asked Ron to take a look at. I asked him to run the numbers. So if we continue to, because our premiums have gone, one of the things, and I'll get Ron to walk through this as soon as I explain a couple of things. I asked Ron to run the numbers of what is it with our premiums versus if we didn't do this, right? We had no insurance, and we decided to pay for it ourselves, right?
I'm listening. I'm just.
I understand the eyes. You got it. Because
Sorry, I'm very expressive. I gotta work on that.
I am, because I am risk adverse. And so we looked at, do you pay for this and keep paying for this, and it goes up and goes up and goes up, because it's not gonna go down.
Right.
As a matter of fact, our insurance rates are gonna go up because of
Houston.
Houston, because that's the way it works. So I asked Ron to do this. You did this a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, before. This is the first opportunity I've had to present it to the council. So Ron, with that, if you will bail me out of this.
So on that spreadsheet that was on your desk, it starts with the premiums back in 07 and 08 for this policy. And actually, let's go back to the Superstorm Sandy. When we had that, we didn't meet even this $50,000 deductible with the damages that were caused by flooding. That ended up being covered by FEMA because of didn't meet any insurance deductibles at that point. So just to kind of give you a history, we haven't even hit this policy yet.
So
Never mind
let me be very clear. This is flood insurance only, right? It's not wind damage. It's not hurricane damage. This is flood insurance only. You got to remember, where are we? We're on the coast. Look at those 2 houses. We are not in the 500-year floodplain. We're in the 1-year floodplain, or whatever the floodplain is. We're there. So we are paying a premium for insurance. Now, I'm not trying to talk you out of buying the insurance. I'm just saying this is for flood insurance only. Right? Am I right so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Hence the discussion.
So when this policy started, this policy may even start before 07 and 08, that's just when I started this spreadsheet. It was $7,000 or $7,100 for the Z house, $6,650 for the Tyler house, for a total of just under $14,000. This year's premium for 17-18 for the 2 houses is up to $30,000, and that's just for this coverage of that. Like I said, like the mayor said, that 50 to 500,000, that gap coverage.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of see on the right there the percent change of increases from 08 to 09. It was just under 21%. A small increase in 09, and then they just kind of go up through. 16 and 17, there was actually a decrease because this policy actually had personal property in there as well, which was at 50,000. And after talking through, I don't think we had 50,000 of personal property in the building, so it didn't make sense to have a coverage when we didn't even have that much property in there.
Right.
So that's why we had the decrease from 16 down to in 17. So that average 10-year increase was an 8.89% increase when you take it over the 10 years. So this middle section here is if that 8.89% increase continues through the next 10 years, we're going to pay a total of roughly $500,000 for this premium, which gets us to 1 deductible.
In total.
In total, over a 10-year period. The next one underneath it is if it was an increase of 5% over that 10-year period, it would be roughly $400,000. So it's just to kind of give you an idea of how much this policy is, where it's going to go, the percent increase. Nobody knows. It's all federally mandated. So even to try to go to another company, which we did last year, we had USI go out and price it, and it's the same price no matter.
Okay.
So-
Councilor Rust and Councilor
go
Heed.
ahead.
Councilor Heed?
What's the value of these properties?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. We can find that out and get back to you. Can somebody take that for action? Councilor Rusk?
So, I know it's late and I don't mean to go back, but we were talking about during Superstorm Sandy, that's the last time these flooded. And FEMA covered everything, or FEMA covered this $50,000 to $500,000 gap?
There wasn't $50,000 worth of damage, so technically we had no insurance coverage because that deductible's at $50,000.
We didn't meet the
Okay.
deductible.
Right.
Didn't meet the deductible.
Right, so therefore the way FEMA, if there is a disaster declared, they come in and they say, all right, what was the damage? Subtract out any of your insurance recoveries, and then whatever that difference is, they reimburse 70%.
Okay.
Is the normal. So we were reimbursed 70% of the damages because we did not hit that $50,000 threshold for this policy to kick in.
Okay. So when is the last time that we had flooding there prior to Sandy? Does anybody remember?
I don't know, 'cause I was only here 6 years when Sandy hit. I don't know if there was any, didn't sound like there was any other flooding from the gentlemen that worked for me, because they actually marked it on the stairs where the water was, and it was the only other marking there, so, and that, one of them was here for almost 38 years.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't owned the home the whole time either, so I you know, I don't know if there was any other flooding prior to the city taking ownership to that building.
Thank you.
Counselor Reed?
So like the original thought process, why this even first came up and why I brought it to the mayor's attention, was the question was, do we continue to pay for the insurance, or do we do it as a self-funded and take this money and put it off into another account and kind of have it set aside in case something were to happen to get to that $500,000 deductible? However, flip side, going worst case scenario, if we did that and something did happen and it hit both houses, that's now $1 million that we need to make up the gap, because it's 500 on each house. So it's kind of, it's a big risk.
This is
And
what,
it's-
right, Ron and I spent several hours going back and forth with this, scenarios in our heads, what ifs, doing some graphs, doing some charts, what's the potential savings, and basically it could all be wiped out. But then again, if you spend the money and you're not using it, so we would still, the money would still be set aside so that it would build up in a fund so that we'd have it. It's not like we'd quit paying it and hope for light rain. It would be, we would still take that into account, but we would basically self-fund. There are risks obviously associated with that, particularly if you have back-to-back storms or if both of the houses are hit with flooding, right? Now, we've also kind of talked about that if we had that amount of flooding that would cause that much damage to the houses, they would probably go away. So my question to Mary was this: what would we do if the Tyler house ceased to exist? Okay, it was wiped out catastrophically. What would we do? Why do we have it? Why do we need it? So right now, the real reason that we have it now is it provides concessions and it provides restrooms. That's truly the use that we have of the house. Now, granted, it's historic. Granted, the Zabierski house and the Tyler house are icons of Eastern Point Beach. Now, having said that, should something catastrophic happen to those houses, the question I asked Carlton, because now we get out of Mary's realm, we go to Carlton's realm, is would I be allowed to build back on that space? Right? Could I do it? Would I be allowed? Carlton's comment was it could be cost prohibitive because you're probably not going to build what you got there now with today's standards. Could you be allowed to build there? Yes. Would you need to get some variances and things like that? Yes. Could you get those variances? Yes. So we didn't just lightly look at this. We looked at this anywhere from cost savings to what happens if the house is gone? What happens if we lose Tyler House? What do we do then? And would we build that back, or would we build a different structure? And then building that different structure could change the face of our beach. Plus, you got to remember that the Tyler House and the Zabierski House are in the historic district. So you have those restrictions is too strong a word. You have those
Guidelines.
Thank you. Those guidelines and concerns as well. So this is a complicated issue, and we recognize that. And this is something. But what drove us doing it, because the thing's due pretty soon, right?
Yeah, and actually, we're gonna need, not to put any pressure on it, I think the feeling is that we're gonna at least do it for this year, is my gut, and that's kind of what my recommendation would be, and it's something that we should probably look at. But
Well,
we do need to get a check out tomorrow,
right.
so the policy doesn't
We did,
Expire.
lapse,
we-
because we
Right.
thought we were gonna talk about it Monday. We
We-
wanted to definitely come to you guys with the.
right, we wanted to bring this up to you so you could think about it. But the one thing that I talked to Ron about is if you need it bad, you get it bad, which is if you need an answer from me right now, the answer is no, which means we will fund the policy one more year. Because I will not put the council under that stress to make this high level of decision with this short notice. Councilor Russ.
I know I was one of the last people to raise my hand, so I can.
Oh, I'm sorry, who else?
Okay,
Oh,
Stephen.
well, let's go here. Councilor Sheffield. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I believe we should certainly take care of the insurance this year. I wouldn't want the burden of, something terrible to happen and then all of a sudden we're millions to have to, rebuild without a formal plan of that possibility. So I think we should stay exactly as status quo. for
Okay. Councilor Russ.
So I've got two concerns. One, my fear is that if we say we're not going to fund the insurance, we're just going to put it in a separate fund, that will happen for a couple of years until we need the finances. And then at some point down the road, some council or mayor will go, we're not going to fund it this year. And then that happens over and over again. And then suddenly we don't have enough money. And then, God forbid, we have a hurricane and we can't support it. We don't have the funds. It shouldn't fall on the taxpayers at that point. And then we have another Mother Bailey house on our hands where we have this beautiful home, but we have no money to fund it. And I don't want to see that happen to another home, especially these two homes.
Right.
So, and I get this. This is a lot of money to put into insurance, and it kills me every time I have to pay our insurance. But I feel like this is safer for those two homes.
Absolutely, and that's why we wanted you to see this.
This is why it was important to bring it to council. This is a discussion that we had. There was no decision that was going to be made other than to continue doing what we're doing now without talking to council and getting council. The intent was never to try to coerce you or strong arm you into something else. I mean, it's a risk benefit, and you're kind of sort of gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand that, and so that's what. But I felt that I would not be doing my due diligence if I did not bring this to you, if for no other reason than to show you the kinds of things that we go through when we're looking at spending taxpayers' money.
And this is budgeted for this year.
Yes. Councilor Heed.
Well, I think it's important to know the actual value of, replacement value of the properties, to know if we're overinsured or underinsured. I know there's danger of being underinsured along the waterfront. My grandfather lost a beach house off of Fire Island. Well, it was on Fire Island, and it's no longer there, so now it's off Fire Island.
Off the island.
And it was underinsured. But likewise, if we're
If it's
spending...
overinsured, then we might be wasting money.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
But we would have to put the money, to Jill's point, we would have to put the money in the lockbox, but then I didn't even think of the question of what happens if council comes along
Well-
and decides to zero it out.
And to Councilor Russ' point, it takes political will and commitment to continue to self-fund. And we have seen occasions where the political will has not been there, and therefore something goes underfunded, and then you're in trouble. And in the cases like this, there's no takebacks. So at least here, even if you have the insurance and you never use it, at least you got it. You don't have to worry about not having it when you need it. So we will continue to fund, and I will not bring this back to the council. Okay? Is from a consensus point of view, you guys okay with that? Okay. The last thing is review of Adopt a Road program. I want to clarify how we got here. On the August 7th May and Council minutes, it currently says, Group 1 Public Works Committee adopt a road ordinance. Mayor Hedrick distributed copies of a letter he received from Jane Culkey, Secretary of the Friends of Anna Warner Bailey House, who wished to adopt the road by the Mother Bailey House. Included in the packet distributed is information from the South Windsor Public Works Department of their Adopt the Road program. I misinterpreted the email. The email was, it was only requested that the city establish and adopt the road ordinance or policy. The Friends of, I'm adding or policy, this says adopt the road ordinance. The Friends of the Anna Warner Bailey House have to this date not decided definitely whether or not they are going to adopt the road. The request was submitted just to get the ball rolling should they decide to adopt the road. So I want to clear up any misconception as to whether or not the Friends of the Anna Warner Bailey House were committed to adopting the road. They have not reached that commitment yet. They're still looking at that. The request was for us to evaluate either an ordinance or a policy on adopt the road, and then they still need to go to their members, and membership then needs to decide, discuss, and vote on whether or not they're going to adopt the road. So I wanted to clarify that before we got started on this, the discussion of this line item. With that, I will turn this over to, that was you, Councilor Heath?
Right.
So this is 649, adopt the road.
So basically, we discussed and decided that we would recommend adopting a policy rather than an ordinance. And leading up to this, I looked at a few different places that had ordinances and policies, and actually just ended up speaking to the town manager, town of Groton. They have an existing policy that has already been vetted by the legal staff. He thinks it's a little bit over the top. So in other words, it addresses every concern possible. There were a couple differences. If we were to adopt the exact same thing between the state policy and the town's policy, the state would require a minimum 4 times per year, and the town only requires 3 times per year. My suggestion would be go with the town. This is not something where I think we need to be completely different. And on top of that, I think the 3 times a year, well, I belong to the Groton Rotary Club. We clean up Thomas Street once a year. So their policy is 3 times a year. We actually do it once a year. So it's a policy that gives you some leeway. If it's an ordinance, it becomes a legal situation. The only other suggestion that I would make after looking at this is that the town has a statement on this page where it says adopt a highway for a minimum of, no, not that page, I'm sorry. It's, I wrote a note on here, but regardless, it says a 2-mile stretch of road. I'd suggest, being in the city, we don't really have a whole lot of 2-mile stretches of road, so maybe that's just one part where we would say 1 mile.
Okay.
And, you know, it's a guideline, not
Right.
not a legal statute.
And the fact that we're looking at mimicking a town policy, I don't have an issue with this. If we're looking at best practices instead of reinventing the wheel, why not go to adjacent municipalities and look at what they have? And if they have a practice that will work in our case, then why not use that, adopt it, if you will, not adopt it totally, but you take it, you massage it to fit our needs, and then it then becomes a City of Groton policy. Okay, is there anything else you wanted to?
No, sir.
Is there any discussion on this? So what would be the next step?
I believe we just submit this as a recommendation for the policy, if I understood the directions correctly. But it's basically copied with a few adjustments.
So what you would like to do is, so you would like us to make a policy using this as our guide? Which, does that include this? This
Yep,
handout as
this
well?
has, there's an application,
Okay,
there's a
so all
waiver.
this information?
Mhm.
Okay, we'll probably get back to you to make sure we have exactly what it is you want in there. And so then present it back to the council at a committee of the whole for review?
Correct. This section here
Okay.
that starts with state policy,
Yeah, that's for the state.
that's, you can ignore that. That
Okay.
was just informational.
That's a good job.
Sorry?
It's a good job, Conrad. That's what you need.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're okay?
Yeah, I was.
Understand. Are there any, so I will take this for action to get this turned into a policy statement for the city of Groton and then present it back to you. My intent would be to try to get it back to you for the committee of the whole meeting on the 25th of September. I will shoot for that. Is there any other discussion on this line item? Okay. Is there, okay, this is special, never mind, it's a special meeting, disregard that. Okay, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries, we are adjourned.